Welcome to Spooky Southcoast.
Look, I know the supernatural is something that isn't supposed to happen, but it does happen.
AM 1420, WBSM presents Spooky South Coast with your hosts, Tim Weisberg and Matt Costa.
Good evening and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz, here to talk with you about the paranormal as we are each and every Saturday night. Now, for the last few weeks, we've been promoting tonight's guest, Nick Redfern, who, if you know anything about the paranormal, you have seen Nick Redfern in some way, whether it be reading one of his many books or seeing him on one of the many television specials in which he appears. There's a little problem tonight. See, Nick lives, despite the accent, Nick lives in Texas. He's from the UK originally, but he lives in Texas now, and there's been some bad weather there over the last few days, and there's no power where Nick lives, which, you know, is good because you get to get back to basics and spend some time with the family and, you know, have a nice, you know, old-fashioned little house on the prairie kind of Saturday night. But that also means that we have to reschedule him for the show. So we will be having him sometime in the future. I know he's still trying to work it out with Chris. I think he was running out of cell phone power and laptop power, so we didn't get the chance to actually finalize things. But as soon as we know, we'll let you know. But meanwhile, that means that tonight we're going to have what we like to call Paranormal Potpourri, where we kind of just throw a bunch of things together and we talk about a bunch of different things. So we're going to talk with our content director, Chris Balzano, and I know that he was saying in the chat room on Spooky TV, which you can get to by going to SpookySouthCoast.com and clicking on the Spooky TV link up in the corner, and then you can see the video, and you can see all of us here. And well, we've got our many shots. There's Matt Moniz for you. And let's do a quick shoot over to Matt Costa there so everybody can see. Hey, there you go. So you can actually see what's going on in the studio. But Chris, you were saying in the chat room, let's bring him up here. Chris, you were saying in the chat room that you had something planned for the second hour. Is that something you want to give away?
No, because it is not a definite yet.
Excellent.
I'm still waiting to hear back. But it would, if this gentleman agrees, he just has to check some things out. Because I called him with about, or I should say, I emailed him with about an hour and a half left in the show. Some things to work out. It would definitely make for an interesting and educational debate tonight.
Well, that's what I like. We brought you on as our content director a while back, and you know, you've done a great job of making sure that we know with plenty of advance warning who the guests are going to be. Now you're getting to experience the other side of Spooky South Coast, the way that we did it for so long, and that's booking by the seat of our pants. That's sometimes driving in here to the Spooky Studio and making phone calls along the way to see who we can get to come on the program, hitting up Facebook before the show, you know, whatever we can do to make sure that we have people lined up for the show. So welcome to our world a little bit.
You know, the cool thing is it makes us kind of think about, who else do we kind of want? Like, what are the things that we want? And more importantly, like, what are the resources that we have? So, you know, we had talked about bringing on someone from the Sally House. So I'm looking to book that guest now. And then this gentleman, if this gentleman can't come on tonight, then it's definitely someone I want on later. And then I was actually able to reach out to Darkness Dave today, who was filming his you know, TV shows that they've got going on, the Paranormal Challenge. And actually, Dave was very nice. I'm surprised he even got back to me because he's like, I was just shooting. I'm here. I'm like, I'm showering. I'm about going out, but you know, I really can't. So I was actually impressed that he called me back. I didn't even text me. He called me back to say that he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight, but that he wanted to come on and talk to some spooky South Coast people. So he'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks too. So in our debacle, we actually found some other things that we really kind of want to explore in the next couple of weeks. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, and we've got plenty of time here to talk about all things paranormal. I mean, we're on every Saturday night, so I guess, you know, the rest of the way, you know, we've got to deal with a few 7 o'clock starts for the Red Sox, but I don't think there's any more late starts So we should be here through the rest of the season. Obviously when playoffs come up, that might be a different story. But for now, what better way to spend a Saturday night than to listen to us talking about ghosts and aliens and Bigfoot and stuff. Right? So Chris already turned out. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to get, there was some discussion in the chat room. I'd love to get some people to call in and talk about what they thought of Jeffrey Gonzalez's reveal this week.
Yeah, and that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because, when we were talking about that on the show last week, we had mentioned how I didn't know anything about what it was, that I was kind of hearing along with the audience for the first time what the evidence would be. And then I saw the photos, on Lauren Coleman's site on Cryptomundo as the show was going on. I have to say the photo that I saw on Cryptomundo was probably more convincing than the ones that they released on Thursday, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I think that I have picture evidence confuses me.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up that cynical side of me. It was more of the directive of what he was saying, the fact that he was asking for money for this. And in my opinion, and I would love to get Mooney's opinion on this, I think that researchers would jump at the chance to be able to analyze DNA. It didn't seem to me like he had to ask for donations to get that done, but I could be wrong. The only thing I know about DNA is, what I see on PSI and stuff.
Well, first off, it's awful hard to get DNA from outside sources. When something's outside and exposed to the elements, you got contamination on top of contamination, and trying to separate that out gets extremely complicated and expensive. And to not absolutely be sure that this was from a Bigfoot to even start with, you're looking at a good output of money to not even be sure at the end of the day.
You don't think that there are people, though, that are in the community that have those kind of resources and have those kind of connections? That, in other words, if I'm a well-known and well-respected researcher and I discover something, how hard is it for me to get that DNA tested?
It all depends upon if you have the facilities and the finances. Finances are the big part. Facilities will do anything you want as long as you got the money.
Right. So you're saying maybe this man is not as with his hand out as I'm thinking that he is. Because I'm totally willing to admit it when I'm wrong. But it just seems to me that he would be able to find someone who would do it for him, or someone who would be able to connect him up without asking for donations necessarily.
Well, he said he has somebody involved in the police forensics, supposedly doing some of the work for him. So having something validated after another group has looked at it, yeah, that to me seems reasonable. But if this guy wants to, run it through the crime lab's DNA stuff first, that's up to him. I mean, personally, I think there's a little bit of conflict there with using what would be public resources for a non-official investigation. You're starting to get into shaky ground there. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, sure. But I mean, I also think too that, there's going to be somebody who will, I don't want to say, a Bigfoot researcher necessarily, but somebody who would like to capitalize off a Bigfoot researcher. Somebody that wants to maybe make a DVD, or somebody that wants to put together a Bigfoot tour, who would, love to jump at the chance of spending a little bit of this money to try to authenticate this as best they can in order to have some sort of end result. I think that if you look at how they handled it, Chris, by going up there and saying that they just wanted help with getting the DNA tested instead of saying, hey, send us money and then we'll take care of it, it gives it a little bit more credibility in my eyes, because they're not looking for a check written to them, but they are looking to have something done basically for free. I mean, are you skeptical at all based on, the way that they approached it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big media, well, I mean, in terms of just the fact that there was media related to it. I don't know. I mean, I think we talked about, we talked about skepticism, and I'm starting to see, at least from my end, a lot more cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
at a lot of these things that are going on in the integrity of people, and so I am, like I said, I am totally willing to say that maybe I'm just getting tainted in the facts, but to me it seemed like somewhat of a circus to get the information out there, and so I think that goes to credibility.
Well, let's not forget though too, if you look at their website, it doesn't really it doesn't seem like they shy away from publicity. It seems like they're kind of looking to get some attention paid to their paranormal society, whether or not it's just to increase their own visibility in the community, to increase their caseload, or if they're one of these many other groups that are just trying to get their own TV show. Whatever it might be, whatever their end game might be, the fact is, by having a press conference, you kind of announce your presence to a greater part of society than might have known you existed previously. So I can understand kind of wanting to have that press conference aspect to releasing this information, but we were talking about this as we left the studio last week. I think the better way to do it would be to put it out there through the regular cryptozoology channels, and to not be waving it. I just think the whole thing that happened with the Bigfoot in the freezer soured the media on the whole idea of this, and you don't need to give them yet another reason to scoff.
Yeah, I mean, although that whole fiasco, and I'm even reading things that are in the chat room. Every falsehood does ruin the field, and yet people were talking about Bigfoot for a month leading up to it, and people were talking about Bigfoot and the the fact that this was a hoax, and that's a bad thing for people who are really looking for it. Like, that all puts it out there for people to at least explore. So, I think that I'm not ready to say the whole thing was a fraud. Like I said, I got a good word from someone last week that this was a credible person, that we should have him on to talk about this, and so I stand by not making a final decision until I get more information.
Well, I guess the other problem too could be, what if it's
and I'm going to have a press conference about it, about feeling that way too.
Well, the worst part is if they, if they really do believe that this is excellent evidence, if they really do believe that this is the real deal, then you should probably authenticate it first and then go before the cameras. You should probably have somebody at least give you a little bit more than just, I guess a photo comparison to a bear or whatever else they did before they felt comfortable enough to go before the media. I would just want to have something a little bit more. I'd want to find a way to get the DNA testing done and then announce to the world what we had.
Right. It seems to me that if you have the connections to be able to put a press conference together, you would have the connections to be able to validate what you think that press conference is going to reveal before you have it.
And I'm guessing whoever would put together that that analysis for you would probably be against the whole press conference angle to begin with. They'd want you to announce it in scientific journals and through the proper scientific channels, and not just go out in front of the local news.
Well, for about $500, you can start to get answers. You can at least rule it out. You can at least put it into a family. If it is within the hominid family, then yeah, you can look further. It may come up being human in the end, but you can at least rule out if it's bear or some other animal for at least $500 worth of DNA testing.
Or for about $5 worth of fingerprint testing, you could probably check out and look and see whose hands it was that were leaning up against the glass. That'd be what I'd want to know more, because the more I look at it, the more it looks like, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but the more I look at it, the more it looks like somebody's either playing a trick on us or somebody's playing a trick on Sanger Paranormal Society. So let's ask our friend Matt Costa over here what he thinks, because he's more skeptical than anybody about it. Matt, have you had a chance to see the better pictures instead of just what we saw in Cryptomundo last week?
I saw a little bit of it, but
what'd you think?
I don't know. It looks like slobber.
It does. It looks like.
But there's that perfect imprint of slobber that I'm not sure is natural.
I haven't slobbered on enough car windows lately to.
Oh, you haven't lived, my friend.
Heard of window lickers, but.
Well, but Matt, I know one of the things that you're very interested in is cryptozoology, and
yes,
have you seen more convincing evidence in the past than this? I mean, to me, this is kind of like. I think the picture of Nessie's head popping up out of the water is a little bit more convincing than this.
I mean, not as far as boogers go, but I've never seen booger evidence before. So that's new.
Yeah, I guess that is new.
But
Bigfoot with a head cold. Maybe he has allergies.
yeah, I mean the other evidence that they have, it's not, to me, anything outstanding. So
And I'm taking it that your point of view is probably similar to the rest of the world. I think that, unfortunately, what they had to present, it's not enough to start swaying public opinion toward the existence of Bigfoot. Although, there is a lot of Bigfoot programming on television right now. So maybe that helps too.
there is. There's a lot more. It's actually out in the media, more so.
Of course.
Cartoons,
More
toys.
Squatch. All right.
I still want that Bigfoot thing. That's for kids.
The
but
toy,
whatever,
the remote
yeah.
control
Yeah,
Bigfoot.
I still want it.
Yeah. And I think Bigfoot the monster truck is making a comeback.
Is it?
You think he can take down Gravedigger?
I don't know. Gravedigger's tough.
What do you think, Chris? Gravedigger or Bigfoot? Which monster truck?
Well, first of all, definitely Bigfoot, but I'm waiting for the Bigfoot cartoon to come back as well.
That was the big. You're talking about the Bigfoot monster truck cartoon.
Yes.
Yes. That.
Although it's I think it's a lot more acceptable because my son knew 2 years ago, when he was 3-4 years old, he knew exactly what Bigfoot was because he had been programmed already by his, even before he knew what ghosts were and slightly after he learned what a puckwudgie was, the dude knew what a Bigfoot was because so many of the kids shows that he watches focus on it and represent it, and and now he knows who Loch Ness Monster is too, thanks to Phineas and Ferb, and so it's definitely I think people would be much more willing to accept the possibility of a Bigfoot than the possibility of some of the other stuff we talk about on the show.
Well, speaking of unidentified hairy creatures, I just looked down and realized Moniz took his shoes off.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, jeez, that's a type of alien fungus from another planet, I think.
That's a little more Lord of the Rings than
Fancy
Bigfoot.
hobbitses.
So, but I mean, what do you think is going to be the end result here, Chris? I mean, I didn't see enough mainstream coverage of this press conference. I kind of had to go out and look for it. It wasn't like it was popping up everywhere as I hoped it might be. But what do you think is going to be the end result here with the media? Do you think they're going to kind of pass this off again, and just it's another reason for them to not pay attention to Bigfoot research, or do you think that maybe they're going to keep following up with this story?
I think that first of all, like I said before, I think the media is, loves a Bigfoot fraud as much as trying actually looking into Bigfoot. So I think that they'll try to jump on it, but I get the feeling that unfortunately, because I'd really like to know what this stuff was, because I however much I feel the presentation was off, I think that there might have been a genuine experience that he had, and I think that's going to kind of fade away. And so, unfortunately, I think that this is kind of just this is a little fish in a really big pond, and it might get overlooked and not get the kind of at least critical look that it deserves.
Well, we'll throw the phone numbers out and find out what you think. You can call us up at 508-996-0500 or 1-800-996-1420. Is that right? Why am I blanking on the toll-free number? 1-877-996-1420 or 508-996-0500. You can also email us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com, or jump into the chat room on spookytv@spookysouthcoast.com. You like how I start blanking on the phone numbers there, but what is it about Bigfoot, Chris, that gets the media attention? Why is it that, we can have, I don't know, photo evidence or some sort of new evidence for Bigfoot? We can have some sort of new evidence for a UFO or an alien presence, but for some reason, ghosts don't get that kind of mainstream media coverage.
Well, I think first of all they do. Ghosts do get. Maybe not.
Nobody's had a press conference to play an EVP.
There you go. And I think maybe that's the nature of it. Paranormal investigators get. I mean, okay, so I run Ghost Village News, so I look at this paranormal news every week, every day, and I can honestly tell you that when I see this group, does work and this is evidence they've gotten, I delete it because it's not news, in a bigger sense, because everyone gets evidence,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that when you have what might be solid evidence for a supernatural creature like a Bigfoot or a chupacabra or these other things that kind of pop up, it's rare. I mean, it's not so rare like, that it's you don't see 3 or 4 of them a year, but it's a lot more uncommon than it is to see that this group went to this, place and they got evidence. So those things almost they very rarely get picked up by bigger media outlets because it happens all the time. And they very rarely go up on a site like Ghost Village because they happen all the time. But when you have things that are actually discovered and things that are a lot closer and a lot more tangible, a shadowy picture can be assumed to be a hoax a lot easier than I think what might be a compelling piece of, cryptid evidence. And so therefore, when those things do come out, and people are a lot more willing to accept that those things might exist because we have discovered animals that we didn't know existed before, then people are going to pay attention. Whereas there's so much white noise, no pun intended, when it comes to the paranormal field, to the ghost field, that those things are just kind of commonplace.
Well, but the other question that I have about it too, though, is, and you see all these news stories, is the tone. You get a completely different tone talking about Bigfoot or talking about a UFO than you get talking about ghosts. With Bigfoot or aliens, you do get a lot of the tongue-in-cheek stuff too, but you do from time to time get a somewhat serious and scholarly tone to those stories. But with ghosts, it seems like it's always, it's got to mention the word Ghostbuster, and it's got to make jokes about the movie, and hey, at least they're not chasing after the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the local library. You always seem to have that kind of approach to these ghost stories when you don't get that with the other stuff.
And I think the other thing is automatically, even when there is a cryptid story and it comes out as as cynical and it comes out as sarcastic and come on, look at this. There's always a tone set with the ghost ones. So it's either that very funny, they have to play the Ghostbuster theme behind it, or it's inherently it has to be spooky. And so by making it spooky instead of relevant, you're making people think that it's not really to be taken seriously either way.
Well, let's hope we get to the point where we can either be serious about all of it or just make fun of all of it. I mean, that's what we do here on the show. We just make fun of everything.
Yeah, include each other, you fool.
Works out a lot better that way. Chris, we realized that we could probably work it out so that you could actually broadcast from a camera in your house when you join us, and we could mix that in with our video feed.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the chat room, but I'm not sure if people want to really see my kitchen.
Well, it's not that, Chris. It's your smiling face they want to see. It's been too long for our Massachusetts listeners here because you've been gone for too long.
I know we're coming up on a year since I was there for the last Triangle show. Which, by the way, when is the Triangle show coming up?
I don't know. You're the content director.
Content director. But you're the master of the three-ring circus known as the Triangle Investigation.
The idea that I heard kicked around, and this was brought up by our friend Carl Wood and a couple other investigators. They're thinking about August 28th. To coincide with the anniversary of Anawan's capture. So if we could work that out to maybe do it on that night. I mean, I just worry that, I'm just, off the top of my head, I'm not looking at a calendar or anything. I wonder if we're getting too close to Labor Day weekend and if that's going to be a tough time for people. But I like the idea of tying it into an anniversary there instead of just going out on a random date.
No, I would completely agree with that. I think I've been trying to do that as well, set things up with anniversaries and things like that. But, I'm definitely willing to, or waiting to be a bystander and just be a listener on that Triangle show this year. So.
Well, we've got plenty of people that want to go out, in addition to the regular group of investigators that we use on a frequent basis, we have all new people that want to go out and take part in the show. And we have, Manny and Kristen from Bridgewater Triangle who, the research group, the website, whatever they're calling themselves, that entity. But they can come on with a different approach to things. And I know personally Bay State Paranormal has been working on a completely different angle about some stuff going on in the Middleborough, Halifax area. So there's always new avenues to explore instead of just rehashing all the same stuff. But if you can tie it into one of those anniversary dates, it just makes it all the more intriguing because, we hear the stories about how on the anniversary of this happens. So maybe we could actually be there when it does.
I'm with you. I'm on board. I'll keep the date clear.
All right. So we'll work with that. And any groups that are out there that want to take part, just send me an email, tim@spookysouthcoast.com. And we'll start making a master list because I think what we'll have to do is we'll just have people in so many different places that maybe we'll just send them all out and they can do their thing, and then maybe we have them come back on another show because, it works good when we're checking in with people in the field, but so often we're sending them to places where there's just no cell phone reception.
Right, and so it's maybe it would be worth it to get some video up and maybe edit something together for the show. Maybe go on 2 different nights.
With the Spooky TV feed, we can actually send people out there broadcasting live, and there's all kinds of different options that we can do. So we're really getting up there in the technology here.
Yeah, we're using the best technology 2009 has to offer.
I know we just discovered, that we can put multiple webcams in here, so we have all these different camera angles, and just before the show started, I realized we can do a picture-in-picture, so that we can actually bring up, what Matt Koss is doing while the show is going on, so people can see that he's actually is working. He's actually over there making things happen instead of just, playing Nintendo or something, huh?
Picking my nose.
Yeah. Well, if you picked your nose now, you're on camera, so there you go. All right, well, I guess, coming up in the second hour, we can keep tossing around a variety of different topics. Is there anything in particular, Chris, that you think we should cover on this show so we can start getting the listeners amped up? Because there's been so much stuff going on that we haven't had a chance to talk about, you and I. It seems every time we talk on the phone now, we're talking about the projects that we're working on, and we don't get a chance to talk about general paranormal stuff. So this seems like a great night to do it.
I have actually. I was really impressed by the first guest last week. In terms of like I've said, I'm working on other projects that aren't associated with Tim Weisberg that touch upon things about sociopaths and serial killers and things like that. And it got me to thinking about something. And I kind of posed a question in the chat room last week, and I'd love to pose it to you guys tonight when we get to come back in the second hour and see if maybe we can get some discussion going on in the chat room and hopefully maybe even some people calling up to kind of answer or give their opinion on this question, because I don't think there's a definitive answer. But I think it's a really interesting question to kind of delve into what is a ghost and, what actually are these things that we look for and talk about. So I'd love to ask that question in the second hour if people will stay with us.
That definitely sounds like fun. And Thomas Sheridan, of course, is the guest that you were referring to. His book is called Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. And it's just a fascinating read when you start reading the book and realizing, wait a minute, I know people that fit this bill for sure. Because I guess, being a psychopath is enjoyable for these people, according to what Thomas Sheridan was writing about. So if that's the case, you need to learn how to deal with them to make sure that you don't get so wrapped up in them that you can't come out of it. If they're feeding off what you're giving them, then you got to stop giving it to them. And maybe I'm that psychopath in your life, Chris, and that's why you have so many things that are related to me. You just can't escape me because I'm basically sucking all your energy out of you, and I'm a psychopath that's hell-bent on making your life miserable.
Well, if you can't tell who the crazy person is in the room, it's probably you.
There you go. I like to think that I'm not crazy for the most part, but then I look at my company that I keep, and I realize, gee, maybe that's not a good argument for...
Hey, I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every minute of it.
I was going to say, I don't have multiple personality disorder. My other personalities do.
Yeah, I think about the fact, and I debate the fact that whether I'm crazy or not enough that it means that I'm not crazy.
Sorry, Matt, just moving your microphone so I can see the clock. And I still can't. Well, we are coming up on the news break, so we're going to take a break for a few minutes. But when we come back, we will talk about all the stuff that we were just talking about, including what is a ghost. We'll also take your questions. Ask the Spooky Crew. That's what we can do. We got Chris on the line. Matt and myself are here, so it's Ask the Spooky Crew in hour number 2. We'll kick around all kinds of paranormal stuff. Everybody in the chat room, you can feel free to check in as well. The number's again 1-877-996-1420. That's 1-877-996-1420. Also 508-996-0500. Or you can email us, spookycrew at spookysouthcoast.com, or jump in the chat room, as I said, at Spooky TV. You want to say hi to Rachel, because she's saying hi to us right now, and hi to everybody else that's in the chat room. We got a whole group in there. We have the Paranormal Pirate, we have Mike, we have Saucer, Nate, we have Whaling City Ghost, Hatch, John. I can't say your chat room name, Matt Costa. We have Film Flunky, Blue Emerald. I'm starting to sound like Jeff Charles reading the 420 Club over here. So, Spade Paranormal, everybody's in there. And Hilly Rose is not in there because he's a little bit busy with us on the phone right now. But we'll be right back with more paranormal discussion here on Spooky South Coast.
First with local news, talk, and sports. This is WBSM New Bedford, Citadel Broadcasting, AM 1420, WBSM.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. The flood disaster in Minot, North Dakota, while worse than any flood anybody remembers, has apparently stabilized, say local officials. The Souris River is expected to crest tonight. They're hoping it won't inundate many more than the 4,000 homes already damaged. Some streets are only accessible by boat. Only roofs are visible on top of water in some neighborhoods. Minot City Council President Dean Francois.
It's a record level. In fact, they anticipate that this is a 500-year flood event.
They have never seen anything like this. There's nothing on the record books. It's not saying that there wasn't one of these kinds of floods a couple thousand years ago, but this is truly remarkable. They certainly weren't prepared for this amount of water.
ABC's David Curley in Minot. Investigators at the scene of yesterday's fatal Amtrak train and truck crash about 70 miles east of Reno, Nevada.
Anytime that you got something that people think is, you just go have something DNA tested. One, this shit's expensive.
Just want to let you know, I'm trying something different here during the news break. I'm putting on the camera audio so people can actually hear what we're saying.
Oh.
Instead of having to hear the news. So what do you guys think? You like hearing the actual audio of the studio better? Because we like to talk a lot of crap about you.
Middle-class workers and added that wealthier Americans have to sacrifice too. ABC's Christiane Island.
So, wait a minute. I don't have to worry about being FCC regulated.
I don't think so. Yeah. But Luann heard everything you just said about her.
About her? What, that beautiful, attractive, intelligent woman that she is?
That they can do that by closing some loopholes.
The only problem is if I don't remember to go back to the other audio, or if I somehow can't go back to the other audio, then we're screwed.
Taliban denied responsibility for the suicide car bombing of a clinic in eastern Afghanistan.
Should we do an on-air plug for the Venom energy drink?
Venom! And children.
It's what fuels the Spooky Crew.
In the UPS store, logistics can help you win big with small business perks and payday.
The best energy drink you can get at a yard sale.
Products, services, and $25,000. If you win free professional printing, that's logistics. If you win free mailbox services, that's logistics.
I like how it's just called Black Mamba and it doesn't actually have like a flavor.
That's cash money. Small business.
Mine's called Death Hour.
Yeah, that stuff's good.
Not bad.
I like that. 18 or older. Order where prohibited. Visit the upsstore.com/logistics.
Mark says Luann's not flattery
This small
operated.
business tip is brought to you by the UPS store. Come to the UPS store today for all your small business needs.
That's how you know Spooky South Coast cares about their audience. We know the real names of the people in the chat room.
Exactly.
We've met most of them.
A virtual copy of your company's brochure, make it interactive with pictures and videos of happy customers. Even most
You know, you're right, Luann. They do taste nasty, but these taste nasty, less nasty than some of the
a
others.
search marketer to make sure you end up among the top of
No, we're just trying to stay awake for the show, Mark. This is my second one of the day.
Casey Anthony murder trial was cut short today, says ABC Genji Denise at the courthouse in Orlando.
Casey Anthony was brought into the courtroom. Her sex team came with her, but before the jury could...
So I guess now the problem is with this camera audio on, I have to be like, oh, guys, I have to step out of the room for a minute. I'll be right back. Instead of being like, hold on, I gotta go take a quick shit.
That's it. You're in recess till Monday at 8:30. We've got some issues to deal with.
Anthony's accused of killing her 2-year-old daughter.
That's right, we don't know you, Spade. Spade, where are you from?
There's a wave of pharmacy robberies across the U.S., says the Drug Enforcement Administration. Armed robberies of drugstores spiked 81% between 2006 and 2010. Nearly 700 last year.
I didn't get a
People
chance to
were
catch the,
oxycodone painkillers,
the press
OxyContin,
thing.
or
I didn't see the press conference. I just saw what they
local
released.
Drug dealers in the street getting as much as $80
I think that's what it cost
a
him.
bill. No sagging allowed at this Texas shopping mall.
No sagging allowed. What?
You know, it's something we do.
Self-described sagger.
Oh, sagging pants.
Unhappy that
Oh, I
Houston's
thought maybe
Reed
they
County
meant
Mall
they,
has posted a no sagging
like,
pants
middle-aged
policy
women couldn't
at
go
the
without
entrance. Some
proper
shoppers
bra.
like Latoya Jernigan applaud the move.
Pull up your pants. Pull them up.
One sagger says, "Fine, I just won't shop."
Put your pants on the ground. Put your pants on the ground.
As long as the rules don't discriminate by race, religion, or gender.
ABC's John Bennett. This is
Mysterians. Like question mark in the Mysterians?
Rosetta's
Bringing my keyboard and play some 96 years.
language learning event in history, because in 2011 we want to help 3 million people learn a new language. That's why we're going to give you an absolutely free demo CD-ROM of our language immersion technology.
This is good when you're sipping, like over the course of a while, but not when you drink a whole bunch of it at once.
I say it would be good cut with some nice rum.
It says right on it, consume responsibly, limit 3 bottles per day.
ABC News.
So I'm one away from my limit. Sorry, kid. Should we reveal why we're all drinking this tonight? I don't know what I just did, but I
Any words for your fans out there? Go to AHRQ.gov for a list of the tests they need to get and when to get them. What was that credit address again? AHRQ.gov.
Let's all watch him eat M&M's. You know, Wayne, you made a joke about consuming more than 3 cans a day will explode your head. I actually used to drink that Red Line stuff. Like, it was supposed to like help with weight loss and everything. But like, if you drank like more than 1 bottle a day, like you would die. Like literally, you would die.
Okay.
It was like liquid cocaine. Like if you drank more than half the bottle in one sitting, you start to feel your heart like pounding out of your chest. It was crazy.
It's Norwegian's freestyle cruising.
And I was like a dozen bottles in before I started to realize that it wasn't so good.
Soda that requires a cardiologist.
Moniz, what's the craziest thing you've ever put into your body?
Call 1-800-257-7.
And moving on.
Or go to bestcruiseagency.com to learn more.
How much time we got?
Cruise with Pete and Phil, Boston to
Huh?
Bermuda, October
Done?
21st.
No time? We're out of time?
WBSM.
Going home? See if I can change back to the other.
If you know the symptoms and get the facts, you'll know the signs of a heart attack. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911. Pain in your neck, chest, arms or jaw, shortness of breath, please tell us more. Cold sweats and nausea, tiredness, it's time to take it serious. Back pain, stomach pain, shortness of breath, cold sweat, nausea, dizziness. If you know the symptoms and heed the signs, you'll be around for a long, long time. Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911.
Learn a song that can save your life. Get a free download at womenshealth.gov/heart attack.
Women, listen to me, and when I'm done, if it sounds familiar, call 911. If it sounds familiar, call 911.
A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
911.
Twisted! Twisted Tea Tribute 31.
Nothing better on a hot day than a Twisted Tea.
There you have it, Twisted Tea, the refreshing hard iced tea that tastes like real iced tea. Twisted! Twisted Tea Tribute 41.
It tasted like tea with a little kick. I like kicks.
Twisted Tea, the refreshing hard iced tea that tastes like real iced tea. Twisted Tea Brewing Company, Cincinnati, Ohio. Twist responsibly.
Hi, Tom Bodette. I prefer a road trip to air travel any old day. I don't have to walk through a man-sized microwave in my socks. I always get the window, and no little seatbelt sign controls my bathroom breaks. Best part, I get to stop at Motel 6. Still the best value for a clean, comfortable room for the lowest price of any national chain. Book online at motel6.com. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you, but not that little seatbelt one.
In the next minute, 156 people will be added to Earth's population. But overpopulation is not just a numbers game. It's also about a better quality of life, which includes access to basic health care, food, clean water, and a sustainable balance between people and our natural resources. If you think overpopulation is such a big problem that you can't make a difference, think again. Learn more at populationconnection.org, a public service from Population Connection.
Faintest idea what you're talking about.
Turn on all your lights, lock the doors, and pull down the shades. Spooky South Coast is back.
It's boring. You're boring, everybody. Quit boring, everyone.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz. Also joining us as content director Chris Balzano. And if you go to SpookySouthCoast.com, you can see the show as it happens. We have Spooky TV live here in the Spooky Studio. So I highly recommend it because we have multiple cameras. We have cool effects. We've just added a new feature here just these past few minutes where now during the news breaks, instead of just playing the news over that audio, over that video portion of the show, we actually turn on the microphones here in the Spooky Studio. So you get to see the behind the scenes of what goes on. You can hear us talking crap about whoever our guest is on the phone before the second hour. And right now that guest that we were crap talking about is Chris Balzano. And it's just another way that we can make things more interesting for the audience. So Spooky TV is on SpookySouthCoast.com if you want to click there. And also you'll be able to watch all the video archives. As soon as the show is over, the video archives are available for watch. So if you, available to watch. So if you miss any part of the show, just go to ustream.com/SpookySouthCoast or whatever it is. Just search Spooky South Coast on Ustream and you'll be able to find it. And now, if you like to listen to the audio podcasts, then you'll be happy to know that the iTunes and the podcast feed are all updated. There was a few months behind there for a little while when I was really busy. But now everything is all up to date, so all the shows are there to download. Matt Costa, I'm going to put you on the spot here, both video-wise and audio-wise. How about the archives on the website? Have you been able to update those yet?
I put a few up. I didn't want to overload everybody.
Yeah, well, they got
take it all in stride.
Yeah, they need some time.
But like you said, everything is up on iTunes. And do we still do the Zune thing, or I don't know? Does anybody?
It's you know what, the feed is still there to Zune. So if it's happening,
I know the marketplace is still up. I know they don't make Zunes anymore.
Yeah, they're going to stop making Zunes, but they are keeping the marketplace. Yeah. So the feed is still going to the market. Of course, I say this assuming that it ever went there in the first place.
I think I looked it up one time.
And it was there?
It was there. I downloaded the program specifically for that.
From the Zune?
Yeah.
But you didn't buy a Zune specifically for that.
No.
That's probably a
Did
good
not.
idea. It's a good idea not to.
Unless they send. Well, they can't send us one now.
Well, they probably would send us one now. Now that they stop making them, they'd be like, "Oh, we got like 12,000 of these over in the warehouse. Send one to Spooky Southcoast." Yeah, they were the only show that ever sent their show to the Zune
I
marketplace.
bet Steve Jobs bought like $1 million to pave his driveway.
He's gonna build himself a summer home out of Zunes. So, Moniz, remember back when you bought an iPod?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you ever do with that thing?
It's sitting on my desk.
Still?
Yeah.
Did you plan on learning how to use it, or?
No, I know how to use it.
Okay.
I actually use it when I go traveling on planes, trains, automobiles.
Oh, so you have actually put things on it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering because I remember like I was impressed with Moniz when he got that. I was like, "Oh, he's stepping into the new millennium here," and that was I forget when it was, but I went to his house and I saw it on the kitchen table. I went back like 6 months later; it was still in the same spot on the kitchen table.
No, it's the kitchen table is where it ends up. Same with my keys and other things that come out of the car.
Yep, that's where all my stuff ends up on the kitchen counter. So, Chris, where do you keep all your stuff in the house?
I've got a little basket, and then once a week I go through and I throw away all the things that that I don't have any reason for keeping whatsoever, but for some reason at the time it seemed like that receipt for cantaloupe seemed important. So
I should do that. I should actually go through the baskets that I have on my counter and actually throw things away that I don't need.
Well, after my computer crashed, I was able to get most of my important stuff from little bits of USBs that were all over my house. So,
well, I'm not saying that I procrastinated cleaning out my office at home, but we started cleaning off the desk, and I think I found the outline for the first episode of Spooky Southcoast. So that's been there for a while.
Did you find the notes where you decided to call me administrator for 7 years?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's... Remember when we argued about that? Back on your first appearance? You weren't sure what you wanted us to call you? I'm
just Chris.
Yep. And now, here it is, 6 years later, and you're still just Chris.
Still just Chris. And about pretty much at the same place, so...
Well, now you're part of the spooky crew.
There you go.
So there you go. You had to sit through 6 years of all of our BS to finally be accepted into the group, and now you're wondering why you ever cared.
I still have my hat, so...
You still have the hat, but no bottles of water.
No bottles of water, no Freddy Krueger key ring.
You know what? I'm gonna tell Chris this story since he's on the air. We've been kidding around drinking these Venom energy drinks. Can we plug them? Are they a sponsor? Venom? Yeah, we've been messing around, holding up these Venom energy drinks to the cameras and talking about them and everything. But the reason why we have them is because I bought 2 cases of them at a yard sale, for like $5 a case. So it's like 18 cents or whatever for a bottle of this is what we're paying. So Chris, I will hold one of these for you, and the next time you come up here, I'll bring it to the studio.
Oh, beautiful.
So you never get to get water, but you're going to get the Venom energy drink.
If he wants, he can have my Freddy Krueger bottle and keychain.
You still have them?
Yeah.
they're on the table right next to the iPod. So there you go.
Close to the refrigerator.
He promises that he only used the bottle once. And don't worry, he didn't drink anything out of it. He used it to spit tobacco juice.
Now, am I seeing in the chat room that every single person is saying that they have a key ring and I don't?
I think that's what's going on, yeah. What we did is we gave away Freddy Krueger key rings and bottles of water to the first, second, third, fourth, all the way through the 250th person to post in the chat room. And then we ran out just before we were going to give you one.
Well, a man can only dream.
Hey, you finally got your copy of the book, though, right? You finally got your copy of Ghost of the Southcoast.
Oh, yeah. I'll be reviewing that any day now.
He's like, I'll be sure to read that eventually. All right. Well, we were talking in the first hour that you did have a question that you wanted to pose to the listeners, and you posed it, but I'll let you pose it again.
Yeah. I was thinking last week as we were talking about, and we kind of were having a side discussion about, who in this kind of lexicon of serial killers would fit as a psychopath. And we were debating Manson and whether or not he had showed compassion and empathy for the people who were in his group, especially in the early days, and whether that was coinciding. And it really came down to, based on Tom's definition, or Thomas's definition, I don't know him well enough to call him Tom, that it all had to do with brain chemistry. And I started to wonder, and so kind of here's my question. I would love to get you guys' thoughts on it, because I don't think there is an answer, or at least one that's sufficient for me. If we survive after death,
In
and
our
our mind
daily lives,
exists,
we make many decisions. Life is made up.
the question will never be posed. You still with me?
Oh yeah, we're here.
Okay. So if we exist, after death, if there's such thing as a ghost, and there's such thing as an intelligent haunting, so it's our consciousness projected outward to the world from a place where we're not physically alive anymore. And if a going theory on that is, that is electrical impulses left over, or whatever it might be, if we had a disorder, I think and it kind of extends beyond this, but if we had a disorder that was a chemical disorder, for example, bipolar, or something, diabetes even, something like that, would we continue to have those disorders, and would they influence the way that we interact with people once we're dead? So if there's something organically wrong with your brain that makes you, for example, a psychopath now, wouldn't you no longer be a psychopath if there's no longer any chemistry, if it's just electricity?
Well, Moniz, I'll let you field that question first.
My answer would be no, because your brain sets up what would be the frequencies that you're used to thinking. Your brain, it's wired in that pattern. So once you're gone, you've established the pattern. You've established the rhythm that is your mind. Chemically, it may be set that way because of that disorder in the brain. Why would that pattern or signal not be continued on outside the body?
Okay, so if I, for example, if I am schizophrenic, and in my real life...
And so is your other personality.
and in life, in reality, or whatever we want to call it, I'm on heavy medication for that. And so I've got that under control. If the chemicals are no longer there, that's no longer a brain pattern. That's an outside influence controlling the way that my mind works and the way that my mind's allowed to work.
Well, your brain was also
course,
altered by the chemistry of what you've been taking, too.
Right, but if I go off that medication in real life, I start to hear the voices again.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say here is you're altering the brain chemistry with various forms of pharmacopoeia. That pharmacopoeia is what's being used to control the pattern that is being put into your brain. Once that pattern is set, what, according to most people's theories, being that it's just beyond, your soul is just, or mind is just being transposed beyond, that pattern is already still set in your brain. Whether you have the chemicals or not, that's the last imprint it had to work with. Because,
so it's only the last imprint?
Or at least it's what helped shape that pattern. In other words, if you don't have the physical part of the brain to be twisted in whatever fashion that you're talking about mentally, then why would it continue on if there's no physical restrictions anymore to it? In other words, the brain is your template, what helped wire your thought process, that energy wave pattern, if you want to call it that, and then it's carried on. Without the physical structure anymore, it's not going to make any difference. The pattern is the pattern. You understand what I'm saying? It's that blueprint is already laid.
Well, to me, though, it seems that changes over the course of our life, and so therefore, why would it not change based on experiences we had in the afterlife or substances we're no longer allowed to take in?
Well, I wonder if it has to do, though, with does it become, you know how we can have learned behaviors, and you know how there's things that just become kind of automatic second nature. It's embedded within our, wiring. But if you take that wiring away, I think we'll still retain some of that, mainly because it's familiar. I think if you're going to change from one state of consciousness into the other, and we'll just say that death is a change in the state of consciousness, so we can stick with this theme. But if that's the case, then I guess it's such a shock and such a change that you try to keep it familiar. You try to keep operating the way that you know how.
Right.
If you sail your boat into strange and unknown choppy waters, just keep doing what you've been doing and hope that you stay afloat.
Bear in mind what you're dealing with is also now you don't no longer have a corporeal body. The brain is used to all the sensory input from all its organs, the eyes, the hearing, the sense of smell, all your senses feed your brain in terms of information. It's looking for its physical connection. You all of a sudden disconnect to that. All you have left is the psyche that's left behind. So yeah, your thought processes are what you had learned and accepted before, because you no longer have the feeling hot, cold, or you don't smell this or that. And seeing and hearing is a different form of perception now, because it's not coming from eyes per se or through an auditory impulse. It's now all just basically electromagnetic, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too.
It already is when you begin, though, from that. I mean, granted, we've got eyes that create that, and a ghost may have, some other way that it receives visions, but, we all know that, paranormal things can hear what we say, that they can react to what we do. We've had plenty of EVPs and things like that say I'm hot or I'm cold, and we've had definitely people that recognize us or see that what we're doing, things like that. I mean, so they are getting information.
Right, but the way they get the information is a lot different now than when they were in their body. That's what I'm saying. Their sensory, quote unquote, input has been altered now because they are all part of the environment that they're in. They don't have the skin for tactile sensation. They don't have corneas and retinas and the optic nerve to feed signals back to the brain, or part of the auditory canal to receive signals from the tympanic membrane into the brain. All they have is the impulses that like I said, made up their consciousness. Their sensory input must obviously be altered, because they no longer have the physical means in which to send that sensory information to them.
I mean, isn't the whole idea of being a ghost kind of hanging on to those learned behaviors? Isn't that kind of holding on to needing to be tied into the living world? I mean, I'm just assuming they don't need to communicate in the way that they do. They don't need to even care about us anymore, care about the living anymore. But it's just it's holding on to that. So if you're going to hold on to what you've left behind, then why wouldn't you hold on to it in a way that's familiar?
Right, but if you take, once again, someone who is schizophrenic, both sides of that coin are familiar to them. And it was the pharmaceuticals that were creating a sense of clarity. So if those pharmaceuticals are not there, and I'm saying these things as a platform to kind of discuss these things. I'm not sure where I fall, and I'm sure. Definitely, it's one of those things that you really think of, because then to extend that, it's like, so if I was an alcoholic, can I not go to a ghostly 12-step program? I mean, will I forever be an alcoholic or forever be under the influence directly? So if by Matt's rationale, if my brain set patterns were, a junkie, then I have no hope of not being a junkie. So I'll be a junkie for the rest of my spiritual life, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it's like each time you think that you're following one idea, your mind brings you in another direction.
Well,
and I think these kind of discussions are interesting because, and there's the side of me that says, that goes off that rail a little bit and says, well, maybe this, and Tim and I have had discussions about this lately, about soul and the existence of soul, and soul as it pertains to the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And it's it's one of those things where, well, now, can we extend it out to say, maybe we're talking, a ghost is more of a soul, and maybe we can touch upon something and maybe register something, get evidence on something on these physical basis, electricity and radiation and heat and things like that. But maybe really what a ghost is an imprint of a soul, and therefore, it's the essence of a person and all of their things, and not just what their brain can contain.
Well, Chris, you were talking about having a junkie continue to be a junkie beyond the veil. Give you a primary example of what you're saying is being somewhat validated. In the Victorian mansion in Gardner, one of the gentlemen who is reportedly had died because of spontaneous human combustion, because he basically set himself on fire because of moonshine. When alcohol was brought up and said Porteo, there was the same EVP response, and there's also been several other cases where people that are obsessed about whether it be a person or other physical objects, and in some cases drinking and other narcotics, believe it or not, in some cases, that ghosts have been still longing for that. They've been longing for that person. They've been longing for that bottle, being able to drink again. And there was, like I said, one case where you were talking about a junkie, and there was a person that I know that got an EVP of where a person had OD'd on heroin and got talking about wanting to shoot up again. So yeah, it still does carry on. I have heard that kind of thing myself. So
it reminds me of one of the very first books when I started seriously getting into this. I think the book is called Communing with the Spirits. I still have it. And one of the things it talked about was really kind of like necromancy and magic and things like that. And it wasn't what I was looking for, but it's a fascinating book. And one of the things it talked about was when making these offerings and these things are basically trying to get ghosts to kind of work for you. You really wanted to do things like work with alcohol, because then you would get alcoholic spirits and they'd be a lot easier to control and a lot more willing to do what you wanted them to do. So the whole existence of alcoholism or drug addiction, as you were saying, behind the veil, I can totally come to terms with it. I can totally say that I've heard cases of it. And I've worked with people who have had spirits that, seemed as if they were bad alcoholics, angry drunks.
Well, down
my question was, that means you wouldn't be able to get over it.
Well, look at the traditions in South America and in other countries where they generally do leave a bottle of alcohol at a loved one's gravesite. That's not uncommon. Alcohol is also used in clearing spirits, where the various shaman or spiritual leaders in certain groups would take a swig of the alcohol and blow a mist into the air to force the spirit back, or to draw them in, depending upon what way they were. Now, bear in mind, like I said, these are in other cultures that you'll find outside of the United States, and some practices in voodoo in the United States, they do the same thing.
Well, and also we like to leave beer cans on John Belushi's grave.
Oh, I'll leave that one right where it is.
But I guess, though, we're talking about, these different afflictions that can afflict people even after they've passed on. And one of the discussions that's happening in the chat room, and I encourage everybody in the chat room and anybody that's listening to call in, 1-877-996-1420 or 508-996-0500. But one of the things they're talking about is the different types of personalities. So just as much as you can carry these addictions over with you, these dependencies over with you, you can carry that personality over. If you're a jerk as a living person, then you're going to be a jerk as a ghost. And if you're going to be a nice, kind, helpful person, you could be a nice, kind, helpful ghost. The one thing that I'm surprised at is that as we've had these researchers who have passed on in the last few years, how come they're not now trying to reach out to others that are investigating, at least that I haven't heard of? How come Ed Warren isn't popping into every ghost investigation
Houdini.
and saying
that wasn't his big claim?
I thought the same thing when he's Houdini, who promised that he would if he could, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Or John Lennon. But I guess what I'm saying is that, I'm not doubting whether or not you carry your personality with you. If you're a jerk here, you're a jerk there. If you're nice here, you're nice there. My concern was if that is influenced by something. I originally started talking about brain chemistry, and then we kind of moved on to pharmaceuticals. You know, if those physical elements are no longer there, you continue to be that person. And I think that's kind of the question that I still kind of roll around in my head. And I've been thinking about a lot, you know, writing things about, like, what is a ghost and you know, what are ghosts is you know, we're working on different projects. It's one of those things that's like, I mean, what exactly makes up who we are? And what part of that would then exist afterwards? You know, is it an intensing of those kind of primary who you are? Is it every little nuance of who you are? You know, I mean, something that would be, you know, if I was a jerk because I had immense pain, because I was always in pain, so therefore maybe have a very, you know, horrible view of the world. If that pain no longer goes away, if when pain is no longer there, am I now a better person? Or, like you guys were saying, is that brain pattern of being a jerk so embedded in who I am that that's who I now am? That's the thing that's kind of been stirring in me this past week.
Well, one of the things that I wonder too is, do you have to have something in that brain chemistry or something in that electrical makeup of yourself in order to become a ghost? Can anybody become a ghost? Maybe not. Maybe that's why we haven't heard from these people who have made the promises that they would share with us once they passed on. Maybe it's just not possible for every living person to become a ghost or a spirit after they've passed on. Maybe it is that issue that we're talking about that makes them able to retain that essence.
Yeah, and I think those are the questions that keep me going because, you know, after we get over the fact that, you know, do ghosts exist, can we gain evidence? Can we use that evidence to help them, to help people who are experiencing paranormal activity that don't want to? It's then kind of like, well, why are there ghosts? Why is this person here and this person not here? Why is this person? And I, you know, I push away the fact that, you know, that there is a kind of set thing. You know, one of the things when I ask investigators, they say things like they've got unfinished business, or they've got, you know, someone who wronged them, or they did something wrong in their life that they have to work out. Those all seem like very, you know, us issues that we're kind of projecting onto the paranormal because maybe we don't want to think that we would have to stick around. You know, like, in other words, I don't have any unresolved issues, so I get to, you know, find heaven or whatever I think of as peace. Whereas this other person, you know, like, because, you know, many of the ghosts we encounter don't have, you know, well, you know, I abused my children, so therefore I'm trying to work that out before I can move on. Or, you know, I can't find my buried ring, and I can't find rest until someone gets that ring and gives it to my wife. Like, those are kind of romantic stories that I don't encounter a heck of a lot when I'm actually investigating or when I'm talking to people and getting their stories.
Is there more of an idea with the people that you do talk to that you are a spirit in distress? I mean, I hear very few content ghost stories. I mean, we hear some stories of people who are content with a haunting or some spirits that don't make trouble for them, but we don't have a lot of people a lot of ghosts that we hear about who are
Casper.
Yeah, like communicating the fact that, yes, I know I'm a ghost and I'm happy being a ghost and I like being here. You know, it's like everything that happens in the investigations that we hear about is like the beginning of Beetlejuice, you know, and very few of it is to the point where it's the end of Beetlejuice, you know, where, hey, we're ghosts and we're happy to live here and we're all getting along.
Well, I think that's because the people who communicate with us are the ones who are disturbed by what they're experiencing, and therefore they're more likely to have a negative experience or misunderstand it. I've had plenty of people who, you know, after investigating and understanding and maybe even communicating, you know, one way or another, are fine, and the hauntings just kind of go away. I mean, that's the majority of places. It doesn't take anything active to help them find peace, but it's these kind of like romantically spooky, you know, EVP-laden things where it's like, you know, knife. It's like, oh, automatically, I know he was killed, and all of a sudden you start creating this backstory that seem to be the stories that stick. And I think the nature of the person's death might have more to do with whether or not they stay kind of with us than who they were as people before they died, or circumstances surrounding the days before they died.
Well, there's also the possibility, too, though, that as we've developed more as a society, a sense that we can say that ghosts exist. As a society as a whole, we can kind of say, all right, 4 out of 5 Americans believe in some existence of the paranormal now. So we can go along those lines of saying, yes, ghosts are real. I think now the stories that we have to hear have to be more intriguing than just the fact that there is a ghost. There has to be more to the story than that. It's almost like if we say now, oh, there's a ghost. Yeah, well, so what? What does that ghost do? What does that ghost want? How does that ghost communicate? Just having one isn't enough now. You have to have one that's a needy ghost.
Right. And I think that makes some people who were maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago more willing to share their stories not share their stories, because it's like, well, I don't really have that stuff going on. It's just, it's just, they get this cold feeling. And that's actually maybe stunted the field a little bit, because it creates this impression that everything has to be negative and intense. When in the beginning, if you stepped outside the Bridgewater Triangle, things seemed to be a lot more pleasant, and I got a lot more stories that were uplifting. And I don't seem to get as many of those uplifting people anymore.
Well, part of that problem, though, is and I hate to go back on it and keep harping on this stuff, too, but what we're seeing on television now is more of that negative stuff. We're seeing more of the confrontational ghosts. I don't want to say we're seeing more negative spirits, more demonic entities, but we're seeing more confrontational stuff, more headbutting between the living and the dead than we're seeing cooperation and peace and love and understanding. And I think as that becomes more prevalent, then I think you're going to see people wanting to have those type of experiences because they think that that's what a paranormal experience is now.
Right, or they choose to ignore those kind of low level hauntings that they might have that involve more not pleasant. Or pleasant, not very intense experiences, because it's like, well, that's not what I've been taught what a ghost is.
And that's ridiculous, too, because what ends up happening is, and people are talking about this in the chat room on Spooky TV, but what ends up happening is you could have a sustained, we'll use the word haunting, we could have a sustained haunting where there could be evidence every day where you could interact with the spirit, document the spirit, and try different experimentation knowing that it will respond, and really set up a good example for the general public that ghosts are real, and put that on television and blow people's minds with that. But it doesn't have a nice script to it. There's no good backstory behind it. There's no drama created around it. There's no easy cuts to commercial. There's no way to actually take it, glorify it, dramatize it, Hollywoodize it, so it doesn't get the airtime that it would if we were just worried about proving that they're real.
Hey, if you don't tell anyone, I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret. Just don't share it with anybody. I love James Van Praagh. I really do. I think that, however commercial what he's doing is, I think that to hear him speak it, to see that other side of the paranormal, makes it more uplifting for me. Because so much of what he's presenting is, fraud or not, that kind of lighter, golden side of ghosts that we don't get to see enough of.
Yeah, but there's you know what I mean.
Take away my man card if you will, but there you go.
Well, I took away your man card a long time ago, but for different reasons. I know your cell phone ringtone, my friend. But the idea, though, that that might have been great, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when James Van Praagh was, considered one of the on the forefront of the paranormal community. But now he's been kind of, now he's a niche. Now he's been compartmentalized as being, that's who he is, but that's not what the paranormal is. And basically what we're doing is we're basing an entire field, not ourselves, not people that know about it and that are in it, but the general public is basing an entire field on what gets ratings. We're basing our perception of the paranormal as an American society or as a global society based on what draws the best numbers on the Sci-Fi Channel. Which, when you think about it, it's kind of how we live everything. Everything is basically deemed by what's going to be making money and what's going to be drawing people's attention. But in this field, more than anything, you can't really afford that.
What will sell the ad dollars?
Yeah. Except on this show. We don't have any ad dollars.
No, but I'm referring to TV, and unfortunately, you're right. That's the standard that this, industry has come to. Can we sensationalize it enough to market, product to? Yes, this poor family's going through all kinds of grief and aggravation. Their life's being turned upside down, and there's strife and everything. Let's put it on TV and let's see who will pay to advertise over it.
I mean, even quote-unquote reality shows are not really that. I mean, you can kind of tell where they've pushed people's buttons in some degree. Let's just say, and I don't want to talk out of school here, but let's just take a look at TAPS.
Okay.
Okay, let's look at the situation with Brian and TAPS on Ghost Hunters where they started, jumping down his throat and everything. How much of that was done for the cameras? And I'm not asking this. I don't want you to answer this, Moniz, because I know that you know behind the scenes stuff. But I'm just saying, like, how much of that was played up for the cameras? How many times did a producer say to Jason, "Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, keep ragging on him a little bit. That's fine. Keep ragging on him a little bit." And that's what ends up happening. And it's not just paranormal reality. It's all reality shows. And if you are a constant viewer of these programs, then you can kind of pick up on that. If you watch Survivor, if there's no drama happening in a team,
they create it.
They'll create it. They'll put together some sort of challenge where they know somebody's gonna screw the pooch and they're gonna have everybody else jump down their throat, and that's what they do. They find a way to manipulate it. So it's not really real. It's just scripted television. It's let's put the people in this situation and see what happens, and then if it doesn't happen, we'll make it happen. And that's kind of what they're showing the paranormal as. I mean, one of the people here in the chat room, I think it was Rachel in the chat room, was saying, if anybody actually watched a real investigation on a reality show, they'd be bored to tears.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe there's room for that. Maybe there should be a show where they do that.
Right next to the Fish Tank channel.
Or the Yule log that they run at Christmas time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, Chris. Didn't mean to jump on a soapbox there.
Oh, are you done?
I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I didn't think of it till we were saying it, but, like when I first started to do this, there were a lot of people who wanted to share stories where, the paranormal was helpful for them. And so just looking at how that trend has changed, I think you directly see the influence of, the scary, the freaky, the intense, the evil, kind of drowning that out. So I would agree with you, and I think I think that it's maybe one of the reasons why is that if we take the reality shows aside, because I hate commenting on those too much because they're kind of where they are in this world, but even like the news we'll cover these haunted asylums and things like that, but I think when they get into the personal, helpful paranormal side of things, unless it's creepy in one way or another, I think it starts to get spiritual. I think it starts to get where people who have had positive experiences somehow feel like it's touched their lives in a religious way, or it reinforces something that they feel about, like we were talking about earlier, the soul, and therefore that starts to get into really sketchy grounds. Now, oddly enough, they'll touch into the spiritual when it comes to things like the demonic and things that have religious connotation, but when it comes into those, and then I knew at that point that he had moved on and now he's with God. Those kind of are the stories that they avoid.
I got a question for you, Chris.
Okay.
How do you feel about the new direction that some of these paranormal shows have taken on? And now that they're, and the best way I can put it is turning them into game shows.
No, that's not the best way to put it. That's what it is. It's a paranormal game show.
Okay.
So you don't have to sugarcoat it.
I'm
The only
trying to.
difference
I'm
is-
trying to be diplomatic.
The only difference is a game show, you win a prize.
Yeah.
Right. It's a difficult question to answer because we do know so many of the people who are involved in that. But I think it's ridiculous personally, and I think that it's I haven't watched any of these more game showy type shows yet, but I don't intend to. But it would seem to me that unless there is a genuine teaching going alongside with it, then it's really kind of setting everything back.
All right.
Because now it just becomes so mundane. And from what I understand, the groups aren't they're not taking people off the street. These are groups that are, working out there in the fields.
Well,
or not. I don't know. Are they?
But I think the thing is, when you're doing this, I don't know how much research they're putting into these groups. I don't know how much of a minimum caseload they have to have proposed, purported to have handled. But I think when you're doing a game show of the paranormal, you're going to get more of these people who are doing the paranormal just because they think they're going to get it on TV from it.
There's been several of
stripping down
those
naked and humping gravestones, perhaps.
But this goes back to the very thing, though. I know you don't want to talk about the reality shows, but I just want to go back into this just a little bit here. The paranormal is the only field that you can get into where you can be doing it for a short amount of time and somebody will start saying, and I'm in talks with a producer about having my own television show. Anybody that goes camping doesn't suddenly feel like they're going to get a reality show where they go out and survive in the wilderness. Anybody who goes fishing doesn't think they're going to get a fishing show. It's the only thing that you can do as, let's face it, it's a hobby. No matter how much you do it, it's a hobby where you can go out and have this hobby and expect that somebody's going to come and hand you a television contract. Everybody that you talk to in this field, these Johnny-come-latelys into the field, they are negotiating some sort of television deal.
Except me.
Okay, so right.
Yours is already signed.
I do not have a television deal, just so people know. And oftentimes I'm disturbed by the reaction of producers when I come back to them and I say certain things, such as, well, you're looking to talk to these 5 families that you want me to give you access to their lives. Are they going to get paid? Am I going to get paid for setting you up? And they're like, well, just go talk to someone else now.
You're supposed to just want to be on TV, don't you know that?
Right, and I think the unfortunate thing is it sets up the expectation that unless you have a page on your website that talks about all the different media you have done, then you're not considered legitimate. And I think that's the unfortunate thing, because then you're starting out with thinking the first thing I need to do, and I know this is somewhat me talking out of the side of my mouth because I do write books. But it's unless I'm published somewhere, or unless I'm on a TV show, or unless I've been on a TV show, or my local affiliate has covered my investigation, then I'm not valid. And I think that validity, and it's the first thing I teach when I teach computer research classes, and I explain to students how for example, search engines work, and they're like, really? It's not the best information; it's the most frequently hit or the highest paying information. And it's the same kind of thing here. We automatically assume if I'm looking for a group in Maryland because I'm looking to pass off a case to them or something like that, the loudest, the biggest squeak gets the oil kind of thing. When I'm doing that kind of research, I find the people who are the first ones that come up in the search engine are the people who have the most kind of quote-unquote credibility because they've been covered by news sources and things like that. And I think that's not necessarily true. It's funny when I look back. I did my, when I was on Coast to Coast about 2 years ago, but the biggest hit that I got on my website and the most response was when I was on 94.5, Jam in 94.5. And at that point...
Was that when you were jam scammed? No?
I was not. They asked me to jam scam, actually. And oddly enough, I could tell it was so long ago that we were actually talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So that's how long ago it was when we were, and it was still on.
I was going to say, you were talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer like an hour before the show started tonight. So.
But it's true. It was still on. It was like, what's going to happen next on Buffy? But, I had just published some stuff in Jeff Belanger's book, Encyclopedia of Haunted Places, which, is such a long time ago, and I know and I'm so much more well-informed now than I was then, and yet at that point I was an authority. And I got 4 or 5 times as many hits than I did going on anything that I've gone on since then. And it was so early on in my progress as kind of presenting this to the world that it's like, really? That's, is that when I became an authority on something, because I was on Jam in 94.5 and people were able to hear me and connect with me and respond to me, as opposed to the hours of painstaking research that I put into a book that some people might read and some people might not read, or at least working with people for things that they've experienced and quote unquote cases, and I've done so much more since then, and yet back then I was considered an authority. And I look back now at some of the things even that I said in an interview, and I'm like, oh wow, dude, that was so far off. I mean, that was being thrown out cliches. And I think that that's kind of the reality that we're in, even more in the reality TV shows. I think and it's molded by them, but I think it's the perception of the investigator that their worth is based not on work that they've done, but rather work that's been covered.
Well, we're actually coming up on the end of the show here. We've got a few minutes left, so if anybody wants to jump in and have their thoughts heard, 508-996-0500. 1-877-996-1420. And I'll just say this too, for all the producers out there of these paranormal shows that don't, these different specials, these different whatever it might be that's a paranormally themed program, understand this: most of us that are in this field are not good looking enough that just seeing ourselves on TV is enough of a reason to do your show. So you got to start ponying up a little bit of something. And that goes for us especially, right, Chris?
Oh, I'm a good-looking man, dude. Don't even put me up there.
Yeah,
I'm a handsome fella.
Meanwhile, he won't hook up a camera for Spooky TV, so what does that say? Because he knows that we don't pay.
Well, no, it's just that the camera adds 30 pounds. So.
Yeah, and I'll seem to notice that when Paranormal State came calling, they didn't have any remote cameras there to shoot you while you're on the phone with Ryan Buell either. So. Which
I think is hilarious, because I think, you know what? Honestly, my legs are really nice. I've had a lot of people compliment me on my legs. I think anything of me, for my next book, I'm just going to take a picture of my calf muscles.
There you go. Same here. I get that a lot too. And
so I'm just going to put that forward from now on. So
you're a hairy Italian guy. So.
There you go. I'm a hairy Italian guy. So, but I think that and that's automatically then it's the people who are able to articulate who get the press, and the people who aren't don't. And I think we know of some really amazing writers who aren't necessarily the best people to talk to on programs, and won't be on TV shows and things like that, who are blow away with their understanding of ghosts, other paranormal things. People who can put a sentence together and look good and are flashy and are kind of PT barring them, kind of like things going on. So there you go, whatever that means.
There's room in this field for people that have style. There's room in this field for people that have substance. But we have no room for people that have style and substance. That's just too much of one thing, Jeff Belanger.
I was going to say that would be me. Yeah, so there you go.
Well, I don't know, Chris. You have your own unique style.
Sure.
If you rock the Spooky Southcoast hat, I don't know how I can possibly put you in style.
Hey, whenever I am doing something that forces people to have to physically look at me, I do wear my Spooky Southcoast hat. So
there you go. So when you're on,
and my wife is like, "These are our wedding pictures. Are you sure you want to wear that?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I got it."
So when you're on Paranormal Challenge, we can count on you to wear the hat.
I am going on Paranormal Challenge. I'm waiting for the call. I am
Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads is going to be a team that will investigate a haunted location.
And of course, it's just me. For anyone who's wondering, there is no other Crossroads. Crossroads is a site, not a organization. It will be me. I will definitely be wearing, a Red Sox shirt. I will be showing off my amazing calf muscles, and I will be wearing a Spooky Southcoast hat with no Freddy Krueger, keychain.
You'll get one. Now, we only have about a minute left, but I will say this. Matt Moni said that he doesn't have a paranormal TV show. What he doesn't know is that there is one coming to Spooky TV that we haven't told him about yet. It's called Who Wants to Date a Ghost Hunter? And we're basically going to put Matt Moniz out there. It's going to be the Matt Moniz Meat Market Show. And we're going to set him up on dates with different female paranormal investigators. And they're going to go out and investigate together. And we're going to see if we can make a love connection while they try to find evidence of the paranormal. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all set with that.
Come on, it sounds like a great show. Chat room, what do you think?
No.
Come on, let's get a petition going. Email us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. It'll be fun.
Didn't Matt have a contract with
pulling your leg,
certain
man.
cable systems to make documentaries, though?
Yeah, I've
That's
been
still a thing?
I've been sending them emails back and forth with stuff. I'm not going to be on it. I've just been ferrying them information. They're going to put other people on camera. You know me. I'm not one of these people that likes to be on these TV shows.
Yeah, we were just pulling his leg. We would never do that to him. I think we'll do it. All right, well, we're just about done for this week's show. So, Chris, what's coming up next week on the program while we have you here?
Next week, we have our new UFO from across the pond reporter coming on. His name's Mike Hollowell. I encourage anyone to go to SpookySouthcoast.com and check out one of the articles that he has posted up there.
Excellent.
He's going to be coming in. We'll be celebrating, our defeat
I gotta
of the
cut you
British
off.
by bringing in a British guy.
I got to cut you off. End of the show.
Oh, there you go. Mike Hollowell. There you go.
Stay
James also
spectacular.
has a new article there, so read that too.
Stay spectacular. Hit it.
First with local news, talk, and sports. This is WBSM New Bedford, Citadel Broadcasting, AM 1420, WBSM.
Weather officials have lowered its crest projection, saying the water will rise this weekend 2 feet lower than